So just a little bit of context as to why we're having this event, because amidst the pandemic, I'm pretty sure all of us in the travel and hospitality industry have been greatly affected. And we're grateful that the situation is slightly getting better in certain places, which means that there's a lot of people who are excited to travel again. However, there's been an increase in a new set of travelers, which are called the eco-travelers. So this group of people tend to care more about your hotel or your brand standing in contributing to the reduction of global warming. But how do you know if you're meeting their expectations? How do you know where your hotel stands within the region? And when it comes to being a green hotel, how are you benchmarking yourselves and what are you implementing to be certified as a sustainable property or brand? So today we've got three amazing speakers with us today. As you can see, these wonderful gentlemen here. First, we have Sai Krishnan Raganathan. He's the CEO and co-founder of SensorFlow. He's got a background in energy management and smart home automation and has worked extensively on energy monitoring solutions for schools, data centers, homes, and etc. He has consistently worked towards engineering solutions that are practical, adaptable, and aligned with the immediate climate problem faced worldwide. Next, some of you might know him. He's Jürgen Seidel. He's a visionary engineer and development hotelier with over 2 decades of experience all over the world. Jürgen has a profound and proven track record in developing, designing, project and managing luxury hotels and resorts technical operations from technical services, engineering, preventive maintenance, life and safety aspects. He specializes in energy and environment efficiency, working with international certification processes. And last but not least, we have Andre Roos. He manages EarthCheck's overall business development and engagement strategy across more than 70 countries and territories. Working with his passionate team of tourism and activation specialists, he provides advice, vision, and implementation along with social activation that contributes to a location's resilience, focusing on green infrastructure, precincts, culture, and climate action. So to get the ball rolling, let's start off with Andre. Maybe you can give us a short introduction into what EarthCheck does and the kind of services that it can help hotels with.
Sure, thanks a lot, Peyton. It's a real pleasure to be with the team speaking tonight. Yeah, look, EarthCheck works across a number of spheres, from a research perspective, from an advisory perspective, from a software development perspective, and also from a certification one. And I think a lot of people recognize the flagship program that we run, which is called EarthCheck Certified, which combines qualitative management system implementation, but also benchmarking, quantitative. And this is why I think we're kind of in this discussion at the moment. So a big part of what we do is measuring tourism infrastructure's performance, benchmarking that against the world's largest evidence-based data set of tourism infrastructure, and then helping align that to an overarching management system that looks at driving continual improvement. And that covers across a number of spheres, whether it be energy efficiency, water consumption, waste output, or quality of life and social indicators. Hopefully that's awesome. A short enough summary.
So you mentioned about benchmarking. So how are hotels or resorts benchmarked for being a sustainable or green property?
Yeah, so, well, benchmarking, if we're just going to use hotels as an example, one of the key things you do when you're trying to benchmark is actually try and reduce those big numbers down to something that's quite usable that you can compare. So for us, it's about being able to look at the type of property and also the climate zone and location that they're in. Then we actually look at a number of what we call activity measures. The primary activity measure that we use to benchmark is an equation that we calculate, which is called guest nights, which is a combination of guests that are staying overnight as well as day visitors and others. And that enables us to then actually look at the performance of those assets as it relates to the guest. And the reason we do that instead of looking at occupied room is purely because if you just think of it from an occupancy perspective, single occupancy is very different from double occupancy. So different water footprint, different waste footprint. The intent of what we're trying to do is actually ensure that the guest is having an efficient stay and being delighted within the environs that they are, and having an ability to interact with that culture. We still capture area under roof, so square meterage in terms of data sets, and that's just so that we can look at different types of reporting when we start looking at our design certification. And then we also are in compliance to the Hotel Carbon Measurement Initiative, which also looks at occupied room. And that's just so that we can do a lot of different types of reporting protocols.
Okay, so that sounds pretty good. And I'm pretty sure we'll get back to some of the points there, but at the moment, I have a question for Jürgen, which is, what are some of the challenges that hotels currently face when it comes to implementing a solution provider or benchmarking themselves to be green?
Okay, thanks for being on the panel here. I must say the problem is that there is actually a vast amount of people out there that approach you, come to you, and tell you they have solutions and want to sell it to you, honestly. And it is quite difficult sometimes to understand who has the quality and the base to really give you this information that you need or that you seek. And that's why it's kind of like, I mean, I have been on the ground, first on the business unit and later on a corporate level for over 20 years. And there were many people knocking on my doors and trying to sell me something, give me something, or tell me what and how to do it. And I must say, then coming, especially when you're looking into these, the engineers on site, for them this is even more challenging, because on the one side, they don't want to be seen doing maybe something wrong, and they want to protect themselves, and they don't want that maybe someone find out that there's something that could be done better or different. So there, most of the time you will hear say, no, everything is fine, I do well, we're fine, we don't need any help. And then there comes this kind of a war and struggle of when and where and who and how to go out and get these informations, if I even want them. And this is, I must say, where in my early years I started, and I tried a lot of groups, those that give me data and those that kind of like certify me. And I must say, this is where I came across EarthCheck, and with Stu Moore and Andre Russ over 10 years ago. And then this was the only one that had active, continuous, guided support online, and that were giving the data in a comparison to the industry benchmarks. And it was telling you clearly where you are, where you stand, what level you are. And from this, you could see where I have problems and where I should get better, where to focus on. And I can tell you, I mean, there's other static benchmarks and certification like ISO, which in regards, I think is terrible. I mean, this is just a document you do one time and it holds for 4 or 5 years. And you will see companies that say, for example, sorry to say this, I maybe a little blunt and open here, ISO 14,000 certified, and they even take the year out when they were certified. It maybe was in the year 2002. And they still keep the logo on their company website. There's a lot. I certified also some, I don't want to say any names, and they still keep the same logo on their website. And they say, okay, great. And this is sad, because they don't understand having a certificate is great to public and show that I have achieved something at what time, whenever. But it is static, and it doesn't tell you where you are on your journey, where you're going, how you're currently performing. Yeah, and so that's why I'm joining this panel to see, okay, on the one side, we need data information, and on the other side, I need a comparison to see where I'm standing in the industry. Otherwise, I have data, and yeah, I mean, I look at them and virtually I put them in a drawer, and this is it. And that is not the purpose of collecting data and using data.
Jürgen, just on that, right? So you're talking about how with ISO, like people were doing it just for the outside. Oh, can you still hear me? Sorry.
Your voice is
the microphone.
Yeah, it's kind of breaking up, Sai.
maybe.
Houston, we have a problem.
Yeah, we do. Looks as though it's coming out. Might have to go old school, mate.
Yeah. Is it okay?
Yeah.
Yes,
That's
that's
way
better. Way
Yeah.
better.
Yeah, no, I was just saying, like, one of the things that you mentioned was the ISO certification, and people were doing it years ago, and they just kept that logo. And I'm guessing, like, there is this change in the industry where people were doing it more for outside perception, but now there is this internal push, and so certifications like ISO don't really hold value anymore because it's not updating, it's not dynamic, it's not sort of consistent with how things are changing. And I guess, like, maybe you've been on the corporate side of this, and I was just hoping to hear more on like how that transformation began and like where you see that going in the next couple of years. How providers like EarthCheck, as well as sort of service providers like SensorFlow, how we can keep up with that sort of change in mindset, especially after COVID.
It is actually kind of like a two-stream. On the one side, you will always have those people that go for this one-time certification ISO, and they will be happy and proud of it because they actually say, I have to do it once, no work, no follow-up, and they spend one-time amount, and the amount actually is pretty crazy. It's pretty steep now, and then they live on their glories, while the others see the benefit. And especially, I would say, for me, I would say being in this COVID pandemic, and hopefully call it after pandemic. We're going into this something now. I mean, there's most of the businesses has suffered already a year, or some already going into the second year, and they had terrible business, no money in, and they were trying to just squeeze wherever they can and will to save money. And now some, I must be saying, some understand that if you have data and details and you go for the benchmarking and the certification, you can better your results, because being green, being clean, being carbon efficient also makes you cost efficient, and that reduces your bottom line. And let's face it, a hotel operation is still has about up to 20% of the bottom line is related to operating costs, fuel, water, waste. And if you can snatch of that, yeah, Andre?
No, you go.
And if you can snatch of that, and I have proven this, I've proven this several times.
Yeah.
If you can snatch of that 5 or 8%, can you imagine 5 or 8% of your bottom line, 20% cost? How many staff would you need to release to cover this or equivalent this cost? And and there's so many things you can save costs in a productive way without making a lot of changes, but also just like the understanding of costs, where they are and how they develop, and then you make changes without having actually to spend a lot of money. Most of the time, the first steps will be just a understanding changes, mental changes, and training to the staff of what and how to do and to use to reduce these costs. And that's why I say, I started really early years, and we were called the tree huggers, and then we were called the green guys, and we called the dreamers. And in reality, yes, you could have said so, but the bottom line is this reduces operating costs. And especially now in this pandemic, this is crucial to have these cost savings. And whatever you can save, you should engage. Andre?
Look, I'd be doing a disservice to ISO if I didn't actually try and fly the flag for them.
Okay.
So
Good.
if you don't mind me, because I don't want to throw them under the bus.
No.
I should recognize that, because
is this because we're on recording, or?
No. And I'll explain definitely. So, when you look at ISO and what they have done, trying to standardize a number of systems throughout the world, as EarthCheck, we're actually certified to an ISO standard. So we're actually certified to 9001. So that's a quality management system. And so we see great value in that standard. When we were first, and when we continue to evolve our own standards, so again, we're just talking about EarthCheck certified. Now, what we found was industry, really needed to start rationalizing a lot of these programs. Because if you look at ISO 14001 is an environmental management system. ISO 50001 is an energy management system. ISO 26000 is social sustainability. ISO 14064 is looking at, you see where lots of standards, lots of different audits. So for us, it was about rationalizing that. So we mapped a lot of these standards together. We ensure that our benchmarking tools are compliant to international protocols. We ensure that we've mapped those standards so that they do speak to it. So if you are a high impact organization, you're required to have an environmental management system. And so we do see value, I think, within those. But when it comes to tourism, you also need to market it. And it's really hard to market kind of a manufacturing standard. They have, I think, their place. But what have we been talking about in COVID? We need to create value. We need to create efficiencies. Is there a holistic system that you can use that actually addresses, a number of those areas? So I think ISO most certainly has its place, and we're absolutely a big supporter, particularly around quality management, because as an organization that runs a certification program, you would hope that they actually have a quality management system to ensure you're then delivering on it. To your point about the technology side, is this where that ecosystem really needs to be able to work? Is an energy and environmental management system is about encouraging a number of areas and actions that you're wanting to address. And that's really about empowering teams. It's about empowering executive team members of the hotel, not just the general manager, but the technical services team in engineering through to the F&B team and their chefs and procurement to housekeepers. It's about empowering those. And a big part of that, and I think why I always connected well with Jürgen, was then saying, okay, well, if we have addressed the vision and are working through your strategy, what are going to be the tactical programs we're going to look at? So Jürgen could look at his benchmarks and say, compared to others in my region, in my climate zone, in my sector, wow, we're either doing well as a regional best practice or regional performer, or we actually have some real opportunity here. Then it was really about driving into it and saying, okay, energy, big topic. What do we need to look at? What are the low-hanging fruit we can look at? What are the technological advancements that we can start looking at? And a big part of that is smart technology. And so, the types of solutions that SensorFlow have and that others have been generating are exciting for us as an organization. We cannot sit there and we have to stay impartial, but we love technology. We love hearing about it. We love seeing the data. Whenever we have someone come to us and say, we've got some return on investment figures and case studies, fantastic, let's hear more about it. And that's when you start seeing, as Jürgen sometimes says, not just technicians, but engineers come into that discussion, because it's marrying that change management discussion between technology, a business case, and then being able to engage your executive team and ultimately the owner in how do you invest to actually deliver a positive return to that asset, but then also to the planet. Hopefully that makes a bit of sense around those two questions you had.
Yeah, I think one of the things that you said earlier, it really sort of got me thinking, because you're talking about how ISO, like the standard numbers, and they're not very, they don't really communicate what it is that we're trying to achieve, right? And then something that's far more marketed, like that has the right logo, colors, wording, whatever. That's where you start to see that relation and clarity as to, okay, what has this person achieved? Why are they certified? And I was just thinking, right, like with what Peyton was saying earlier with sort of eco travelers, at some point when you go to booking.com, Agoda or whatever, you should start to expect a kind of star rating for ESG as well, like how you see a hotel's, star rating for, how comfortable they are, 3, 4, 5. You should start to see that for ESG metrics as well. And I think that's going to be, for me, at least in a way, the third push to get people to actually follow through and do well on their promises, because it's going to attract the right kind of people, right kind of sort of generation, Gen Z, millennials, all of them who want to travel consciously. And I don't know how the OTAs see this. I don't know if you guys have some idea of like, do they actually care about it? Should they care about it?
You're saying
what
the
do we need to do?
OTAs, the online travel agents?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, anyone who's EarthCheck certified or in a number of our accreditation programs are actually listed in a number of GDS systems or OTAs. I think the challenge is there's an ocean of labels out there. So, there's lots of green labels, lots of stamps out there. So there's been efforts made to try and rationalize those. But I think that what we've seen, certainly just before the COVID pandemic outbreak, was very much a marketplace that was far more educated than, say, when we were first talking, Jürgen, some 10, 14 years ago. I think the demands of the consumer have become more. And I also think that they're actually starting to ask more questions. So I think, yes, there's a responsibility for any organization to try and engage their online travel agent or other types of portals to share their stories. That's really important. But be prepared for the person who appears with their phone who will actually start taking photos saying, really? Is this really green? Is this really sustainable? And I think the scrutiny is now being turned up more. So I think what's really important when you're thinking around, again, sometimes luxury or lifestyle discussions, this is when those smart technologies start to play into the discussion, because you can actually have that conversation with the guest. So remember, we were saying it's not about making the room more efficient, it's about making the guest more efficient. Once you start thinking about that, that's about how am I creating the experience for the guest? How am I engaging with you to talk about what you are doing as an organization to make their stay efficient, to give them those opportunities to engage with the community and with culture, to understand the cultural nuances of the destination that they're in, the ability to engage with menu design and food and beverage concepts within that destination that are slow food concepts or working within a zero waste footprint or a circular one. All of those start to then frame into what you can actually engage with, which I think is really exciting. Now, has that changed post-COVID? I don't think so. I think if anything, people are still dreaming, are still fantasizing about being able to get out. I think maybe there's been a change in city-based experiences to resort-based or terrestrial style experiences, but I still think the demands are there. The flip side, Sai, is very much on owners. So most owners of these assets now are under a huge amount of outside pressure to ensure their assets are being managed in a sustainable way. And the way to find surety with that and build confidence is to ensure that they have some form of credible third-party accreditation that has evidence-based data, has what we would call ISO-based auditors, those that have codes of conduct and compliance, and that have real people behind them. Are you just ticking boxes, or are you actually effectively implementing change management into your organization and backing that up with reports and data?
Yeah, I guess again, this might be one for you. Like, speaking of owners, obviously there are different types of owners, and they all sort of have a different viewpoint on how ESG fits into their mandate and where the sort of priorities are. I guess, in your experience, having dealt with different types, how do you see that mindset differ, and have you seen that change as well? I guess after COVID, but also with sort of the rise of ecotourism.
The problem is that with the social media growing, I mean, everyone with a mobile phone nowadays is a reporter and reports of things happening. And when the business is scarce and is really bad as it is now, every voice counts, and you want to make sure that the voice is positive. And the owners now, I'm not sure there are or there should be, really, really worried and concerned that they do the most possible best things and right things along benchmarking, monitoring, auditing, and sharing this information like you would have your annual CSR report. But I must say, one of the things I came across also in my past was, people wrote CSR reports that were just too beautiful to look at. It was like a bed night story that you read to your children, and then you say, where does this come from? And you see, this is also the point where when you have a benchmark certified supporting document as evidence, you can write a CSR report based and around this data that is certified. And then also, I mean, you will see now when you go nowadays online, and you will see it's not about the location, the type, the size, and whatsoever. The new generation of guests are looking for safety, comfort, environment aspects, and they're looking for whatever there's out there saying, okay, this company has a system. And whatever it is just monitoring, reporting, ISO, Earth check, and especially in the Scandinavian world, they have like the Swan and whatever they have. But this is what guests are looking for. Not particularly that they fully understand what it also always is, but they see that company, that hotel is engaging, is doing something, is implementing a system, a reporting, a recording, and to have it on a platform, on the international platform, not them just saying, I'm saving this and doing that and here and there and there and there. No, they have a platform that verifies it. And the owners hopefully see this COVID as a chance, if they haven't done so, to engage in some of these systems, that they have a solid and fundamental base platform where they can report their operation to the client that is looking for a new escape out of the COVID when they want to travel. And we will have travelers that will, as Andrew said, they will just go nearby locally in town. And some, funny enough, we had already recently a advertisement saying the winners of the COVID, and it was all the groups that were remote island destinations, because then the traveler was thinking on that area is less people, there is some way of getting in and getting out, and there's restrictions, so there will be less chance for me to be surrounded by hundreds of thousands of people. That's, for example, why islands like the Maldives, Seychelles, and other like Fiji are now really gaining momentum, because this is locations where the resorts only have 60 or 80 rooms, so they have maybe a total of 200 people maximum at that moment on that area, and the guest can worst case stay in his villa, go to the beach, and gets the food delivered, or decides what he wants to do with his time. And these are all the things. The industry is changing for sure. So every operator and owner or management company has to find their new way how to address the traveler to get interested to come and stay, be safe, and make an Instagram of saying great place and shares it with the people. Because again, you can say what you want, but sometimes the voice of one person to his friends is worth more than whatever you post on a website. Andre?
Yeah, I think if the concept of engaging around the consumer one, I think, is an important one. But I guess if I was kind of coming back around, Sai, what you were, I guess, originally asking us around in terms of, geez, I need to try and make a decision for how I would look at energy tools and systems. That's very much not necessarily driven by the guest. The guest sometimes would be thinking, what, you don't want, you're not running this asset sustainably? That's strange to me. So the consumer perspective is an interesting one. I think I'm always very curious, Jürgen, with our discussions around the CapEx cycle and OpEx cycle that we're seeing coming through. And I think currently where we are, currently right now, and then where we look at in terms of a post-COVID world, every single hotelier that I've spoken to, or ownership group, or asset managed class manager is all looking at their assets in terms of value. As we know, not every hotel is open. I mean, some have been closed for quite a considerable amount of time. Simple things like, what's your maintenance schedule? Have you been maintaining? Have you actually ensured that your teams are ensuring that the maintenance is there? Now, on top of that, that does provide opportunities, as you were saying, Sai, to start looking at business cases, but you can't leave that on the shoulders of just the engineer. If a team are actually there to build the business case, the engineer and your technicians are there to help be part of that discussion. They need to work with the financial controller and the general manager to build that business case for those types of initiatives. You need to first understand, well, where do we sit within the asset? Does it actually need to have these? Where are we going to focus our efforts? So that's why you do benchmarking. It's why you do a health check, a diagnostic. When I go to the doctor and I have a general diagnostic on my health, it's like they're testing my lungs, my heart, my weight, my blood pressure, and they're saying, geez, Andre, you need to lose a bit of weight, stop drinking all the beers, lay off the chocolate cake, get running a little bit, be careful of your elbow. So that's the same thing that you find within these assets. You need to understand that first and have a discussion about where are those efficiencies. Now then, based on that, you're then trying to find those solutions. And so that's about engaging with your supply chain, talking to your colleagues, understanding with others what else are out there in terms of those technical solutions. Who are the people behind these organizations? Are they backed up by scientific data and research? Do they stack up in terms of industry performance? Once I have that information, I'm then actually building an idea of change management. So it's this 101 kind of change management. All right, team, here's the equation. Here's what we think will happen. Here's our best hypothesis of what will actually be delivered. And then being able to take that back up, not with the engineer presenting it, but with the general manager engaging either with the owner's rep or with the owner and saying, well, this is your asset. You want this to be performing as best we can. Here's where we are. We've had third-party review. We've seen that we have an issue here. This is what we've come up with solutions. Here's a menu of options that we're looking at. And here's the return on investment that we think we could make. And as Jürgen, I'd be keen to hear your thoughts. Here's the risk of us if we don't do anything. And I think I'm curious, Jürgen, is we always spoke about how have you handled an owner who goes, oh, can we just delay?
I mean,
how often does it happen, right?
Because, if you don't have the data of your machine running operating hours, shutdown, scheduled shutdown, or forced shutdown, you're blind. And then also, if you don't record it, or if someone just say, I did my quarterly maintenance of the chiller and the pumps and whatsoever, but I mean, if the pump was not running for half a year, then actually this makes no sense. But if you have really running operating hours, data and details, you have a document that certifies or confirms. I mean, how many times came across I had 3 chillers and one was already dead for 5 years and the engineer just shut it down. He said, never mind, I have 2 more. I run one in the standby. And then he was running, of course, the one he knew is better and is newer, without any forced shutdown and maintenance, because he knew the other one is already old and starts badly. And don't. I'm
already having a heart attack, Jürgen. I'm already having a heart attack.
No. I tell you, this is not one case. This is many cases.
Yeah.
And then you see, you as the owner or the GM wouldn't even know that the guy is just running one chiller for the last 3 years because the other one he doesn't like. Honestly, it's like, no, that's old. It's not a good chiller. No, and it's very noisy. Okay. have you at least finished and repaired it? No sense. We have one good chiller. Okay, and when this breaks down, yeah, don't worry, boss, that one is a good chiller, runs well, you know. And if you don't have this information, you are running totally blind. And then you come to this situation where, I must say, in my career, I had once a complete chiller breakdown of one resort in Phuket on Laguna. Yeah. I mean, I can say it was the Sheraton. It was many years ago. It was caused because of bad water maintenance, and the chiller tubes blew up because they were eroding under the water quality. A very basic thing. If someone would have done their job and would have checked the water, it wouldn't have been corroded, the pipes wouldn't have bursted, the chiller would have functioned another 10 years. Suddenly, pop, all chillers were out. So you had to transfer all the guests, you had to find a new replacement chiller, and then you had to flew one in of expensive costs, which you could have just saved with just having done the main normal thing. And if you would have the records, if you would have the water quality, the maintenance, and all the things were done, and then with this information being correct, like through data recording and reporting, you as a chief engineer, director of engineering, would have the data to go to the owner, say, hey, boss, the softening plant is not working, the water levels are bad, I need a new softener plant, otherwise the chiller will blow. And you could foresee it then. But this was not there. It was some years ago, really long ago, and it was just not there, and someone just recorded maintenance done, system working, all is fine. Okay, all is fine. Chiller broken, dead. Okay, so that's why you have to get, as an owner and as an investor, and being a property, being your asset. I mean, you have to somehow have a system to make sure, not that you have a good team and the engineer know what they're doing. Yes, they may, but they don't have the data to know when and what to do. That's why when you have a car, they say every 10,000 kilometers, you have to go in to do A, B, and C. And you get a record and it says blink, 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 go to the repair shop and change the oil. But if you don't have it, you will not do it, and it will break. And you see, we come back always to the same thing. If I have the data, then I can go to the GM, to the owner or the investor and say, I need to raise the flag. We have a problem. There's something not working. I don't know what it is. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a specialist, but I see from the recording, something is not right. Something is not correct, because the data shows something A, B, and C is high, or something is very low. My output is very low with a high energy. Something is wrong. I don't know what it is, but with this information, now I can go to the owner and say, please give me a specialist, consult a specialist to come in to check the system and find out what is wrong before something really goes bust. And it's always the same. You need data. You need data. Check it, record it, report it, and then you need to compare it. Without comparison, data is nothing. And we come back to the same thing. You need to benchmark it. Either in the past, I can tell you, I did my own benchmark. I wrote my own benchmark. I said, this is roughly where I should be. With an occupancy of X, I should be here and there. And with an occupancy of Y, I should be here and there. If not, something is wrong. But of course, now this is the beauty with having automated system available online. I get the data correct and detailed and on a computer and system. On the other side, I get a benchmarking certification system that tells me how do I perform. And only with this, I have the information to go to my owner and say, we have this 5% capex retention money year by year. Please, can I spend it now? Because it's time now for us to change the chiller, the boiler, or the chiller pumps, or the lifts, the lift motor, the brakes, or whatsoever. There's millions of things in a hotel that can go wrong. And don't forget it. I mean, we always talk about it. Everything has a lifespan. In reality, we say MEP systems have a lifespan between 15 and 17 years. And then you really should be looking into getting a new lung or a new heart. There's always the owners that will say, oh, give me one more year. And then you can you can either say I'm a bad engineer, I would not listen to the owner and say, no, must be now, and the owner will say, why? It's still functioning. And then if you as an engineer just say, yeah, it's functioning, but it's no good, then the owner will say, give me evidence, give me supporting documentation that this is not good, and why. And that's why, I mean, your voice, you could be the best engineer and your voice at that moment may count nothing. And especially now,
just on that, Jürgen,
there's no money for them to spend easily.
Yeah, just on that, Jürgen, like one of the questions that's just come on so Zoom right now, it's around this, exact thing. So the question is, what are your ideas of moving beyond ROI as the sole basis for sustainability decisions? It's important, but not the only reason. The world is in the midst of multiple environmental catastrophes, and we have owners who are worried about payback in 1.5 years versus 2 years.
I'm happy to pick that one up, and thanks, Tom, for the question. I think you're right. Return on investment isn't just about the economic return. It's also about what you're actually bringing to that particular community. It's a number of other factors that need to be considered. But again, it comes down to what matters to the owner. And then it also comes down to then what matters to the management company in terms of how they're actually performing. So yes, we are currently talking about return on investment, but those are mostly built around a discussion about sometimes major CapEx investments. What we've seen in some mechanisms around sustainability-linked loans and also green bonds has been a focus around your social makeup within the actual organisation. So that's looking at paying people livable wages. That's looking at the makeup of your executive team in terms of a ratio of males and females and the like, how you're looking at other types of social indicators. Have we seen a huge amount of shift in the discussion around natural capital? Not to the level that we think it should be from an EarthCheck perspective. We think it could be more focused. There is, we're still talking about energy efficiency. It's 2021. For us, we're also benchmarking water, total water footprint. We haven't even really started talking about potable water consumption, the issue of the 3 factors of quality of water, availability of water, and a heap of other discussions within that. Waste plays an incredibly important part of the value stream that you have, both from a supply chain perspective coming in and what happens within the system and what happens on the way out. So hopefully we're going to see more owners start to look at the concept of quality of life and what it means. Look, Alila were doing this many, many years ago when Mark Endelson started, and founded the organisation. When we started certifying their designs, one of the first things they would do is actually ask the community, do you even want us here? Let's start having that discussion. What do you want from this development that we're actually going to be potentially building? Should we even consider building here? And if we were to build, what other types of things we can actually include you in that process? And I think sometimes that gets lost. But Tom, I think there's a lot more work that we can do. And I think you're absolutely right. Before COVID, let's get some real statistics for the hotel industry. Before COVID happened, the industry was growing at this rate. We all saw the graphs. It was this booming rate. Marriott was opening a new hotel every 12 hours. So just think of that in terms of footprint. And everything that we had to do in terms of curbing our emissions, of understanding our footprint, was saying we have to make deep cuts going this way. So when I've suddenly got these two, that we've got a real challenge here. So I think what has been encouraging has been seeing both stock markets and the finance industry really start instigating more and more requirements for asset class owners and for the financial industry to start really measuring and reporting on its impacts, and then actually making economic decisions, but then that positively impact other kind of indicators other than just carbon or energy, but also speak to social inclusion and quality of life. Hopefully, Tom, that answers a bit of your question. So I don't know, Jürgen, do you have any other thoughts?
I mean, I would say the ROI is definitely always important to look at whatever you do and invest something new. But in most of the projects I worked before in the communities, as you said before already, we always looked about the surrounding, the communities. Okay, what can we do, what we can bring in, or what can be safe to bring in to use locally. So for example, the thing I almost must say was one of the craziest projects I had is like we kept all the cooking oil of the kitchens and we converted it to biodiesel and glycerine to make candles and to make soaps that we again used for the staff areas. And with the biodiesel, we run wood chippers on remote islands. Furthermore, we then gave this not only for us, but we gave it away to the surrounding community. So we said, here, we have it, take it for free. We give it to you as a support. So I think we come back a little bit to where the whole thing started when we were the tree huggers, where it was all about being green and clean and being the crazy guys. And then we put in between, we put in this, what is the financial benefit of doing so? But in reality, it's both. It is always, you do something for the better of the organization, the people, and the surrounding. And some people, you can pack it and wrap it to be just green and clean, and social impact to yourself or the company or the surrounding. And the other one you say is the finance. It's all. It's just, this is the beauty of it, that I always hated when someone say, you're a tree hugger. And I said, no, actually, I'm an environmentalist and I'm a energy efficient engineer. And it all goes hand in hand. And of course, I mean, I would not go to my owner and say, hey, Mr. Owner, please be green and clean, and we will be seen better in the sustainability and surrounding. He most likely will not listen to me. But if I go to him with the ROI figures, then he will say, good, well done. Let's buy the chiller tomorrow. You know, this is, you have to use the right approach to the right person at the right time, and which one you would then say makes the most sense obtaining your goal.
Yeah, and I think that's something you just can't get away with, because owners are, after all, investors, right? They are investing into that infrastructure, into that sort of property to get yield. But I think one of the biggest changes that has happened is ESG funds and sort of institutional investors requesting for that kind of ESG metrics, because more and more retail investors, as well as sort of big funds and all of that, they have a mandate to invest in companies, in infra, in real estate that has the right sort of environmental sustainability goals and metrics. And so if you're not doing certain things, it could work against you, meaning you won't be able to attract the right kind of people to finance your next project, or even sort of offer lower interest rates potentially on bonds or collateral that you sort of put up. And so I think as painful or as obvious as it might be, it does come down to money still is at the center of it, but doesn't mean that you can't incentivize people to do that for all the other reasons as well. You just need to find creative ways to tie it back to those sort of causes, while still sort of keeping that the equation of ROI at the center of it. And this is the whole thing about sustainability is profitable. You just need to figure out how to sort of make that structure in a way where people continue to benefit from all of the side effects of being a green property, a sustainable property, while offering economic incentives to push that. So I think that's where the industry is going, and hopefully a lot more of these things pick up in the next decade or so. So I'm very
see an interesting question here.
I know I've seen a few in the chat, which is looking at intensity levels from the EU, and Jürgen, I see one which is yours around energy management systems and computerized maintenance management systems.
Answer this one?
Oh man, I'm so curious to see what you're going to say.
Okay, now I have to.
Jürgen?
I mean, we all know SCADA, EMS, and CMMS, great systems and all work. However, I mean, SCADA, I would say in general, is an old system you can forget, because nowadays everything is online, is cloud-based. So SCADA was at that time when we had a resort in a remote location, and we needed to give the data from point A to point B, and we needed a transmission system, and then we needed something. So SCADA was in that way, I would say. What I remember, please tell me if I'm wrong, we had a communication system. Forget it, it's obsolete. At the moment, it's all online, it's cloud-based. EMS and CMMS, good systems out there. I worked with a lot. I helped and developed with a lot of these companies, Hong Kong, Singapore-based companies. I actually helped them to develop these EMS and CMS systems. Great, but the problem there is every hotel is different. Every hotel has different parameters. Every hotel has a different setup of, just look at one thing, for example, a different setup of air conditioning and hot water boiling. These are one of your biggest consumers already in the hotel, and all are different. So it's like if I give you a checklist and you take the checklist from hotel A, B, and C, they will answer as per the checklist. But the checklist actually, most of the time, will then ask the wrong questions, or are not done to give you multiple choice of answers. So I had EMS systems, Honeywell, and now some people will jump all over me and other things. Great systems, but they were not tuned for my hotel. They were not working for my hotel. Then I had SCADA system for Train and for York and for whatever. And it is a computer program that you still need to adjust and adapt to fit your installation. The problem there is, there is very little people out there that even understand the system and can adjust it and adapt it. So that's why I would say, I mean, I had Honeywell and I turned it off. And that's it.
Really?
Yeah, I turned it off.
Was it, hold on, Ergen, let me guess. Was it too many notifications?
Recently, someone asked me, what do you think about that? I said, very good. Sorry, you spend the money, turn it off. Because you need someone, sorry to say, you need someone like me. Yeah, and it sounds crazy. You need someone like me to go in and set the parameters of the Honeywell EMS system. Otherwise, the system.
So it's the commissioning. Is that where it falls down? The building, when you're bringing on the building management system.
Correct.
It's very much about the commissioning, and then having the capacity of skilled people to then use it and manage it. Is that how you see it?
Correct. You need to adjust it. It's like I mean, I would just explain it like this. So we all have a car. In a car, you have a computer. The computer is in, let's say, in a BMW, is almost everywhere is the same. Yeah. But for every model, the application is different. The machine management is different. When and what to change the gear, to change the emission, to change the pressure, to change the injection, the electricity is different. And it can be in a Series 5, the older version to the new version, and you have already a complete different program there. And this is one thing that someone told me. It's like they were saying, we have Android mobile phone applications. The camera has a really, really good solution, but there's so many Androids, and Android cannot build a adaptation to all of the cameras because of Samsung and all the different brands they have. While the camera at iPhone is not as good, but it is their camera, is their program, and they program it and work together. Hardware, software works together. So now this is the whole thing, and it's like definitely, if you have the money, if you can, chiller management system and whatever system you can, do it. It must be customized, it must work for the application, and it must be adjusted. And in the lifespan of this application and the property, it may needs to change, it needs to adapt. And we come again to the same thing. If you don't know what you're doing, then you have some system that tells you something which is wrong. That's why the adaptation is so important. And I rather have no CMS and AMS system. I have the data, and I have the benchmarking, and I make up my own piece of cake. And I will be flexible by myself, because I can tell you one thing. every hotel has a bench line, a baseline. 30% till 50% is the baseline. I have some costs. It doesn't matter how many guests are in, the cost will always be something like that. I need to understand it, where is it? And then I have these 50 to 60, 70%, then I get more efficient. Over 80%, I get most efficient. And then when I come to 100%, I have a problem, because then I would be so full that I can't make my maintenance or my shutdowns, that I will actually derive my my products, my installations.
Yes.
That's why you see generators are designed to work around an efficiency coefficient of 80%. Yeah. And what they trick you is, funny enough, they say you can run the generator till 100%. In reality, they put in a limiter. They give you only 80% of the generator. The generator could do 120%, but they let you do only 100% because they don't want you to go in the real 100%, which would be really bad for the generator.
Over engine. So Sai, with that being said, when you were first pulling together, I mean, I'm being quite serious because I'm quite curious. When you were pulling together SensorFlow, how did you grapple with that conversation? Now that you look at Jürgen, he's an engineer, he's talking about the challenges with its own BMS. How did you guys address then that ease of technology and then representing data flows back to them in something that's usable?
Yeah, no, this is exactly why we started the company, because I come from this background, right? Like whatever Jürgen said there, absolutely spot on. Like I've seen these huge BMS systems. They're just glorified, massive TV screens with data just flowing in. But the value in data is never, what's happening at that point in time. The value is in the trends. The value is in, sort of what analysis can I do to then take action, to then see if that action resulted in certain things changing. And there was a lot of challenges around this. And this is also one of the questions that's come up on sort of the Q&A channel, which is, how does a solution provider like us ensure the data is accurate for the clients as well? And, I'll start from sort of when we founded the company, we looked at what is the biggest reason why we can't adopt smart building solutions into the market. And there are a couple of reasons. One, we found that it's really hard to retrofit sensors into existing buildings. Like new builds, you can wire things up, but existing buildings very hard. The second was this, how the whole BMS play was and how it was too complicated. It didn't add the value, and there was no tight integration between hardware and software, right? Like you would have different providers providing different sensors. Someone is doing the software layer, another person maybe comes in to provide a data layer. But what the end user really wants is that sort of end-to-end stack that takes the data, makes sense, puts it on out there as a report, and tells the person what they should be doing, as well as what the sort of what the system achieved by taking maybe some automated decisions. And so this was the core focus of the product. And I'm happy to say that we've achieved exactly that with the hotels industry, right? Like we go in, retrofit a room in under 5 minutes, we start automating, we collect a lot of data. We then provide insights from that data, actions from that data. We also automate a bunch of actions. And then this is where the data accuracy becomes super important. So, we obviously we calculate on a monthly basis what our savings is. And that methodology, we had to sort of build up from scratch because we didn't want to go with the old school baseline method. That's too long, it's too inaccurate. So we had to measure, things in real time, collect that data, make sure that it's accurately collected, accurately processed, and more importantly, the savings that we put out to our customers is accurate as well. So, obviously we did a lot of internal tuning to make sure that we get a certain accuracy. But as with anything, you need to be peer reviewed, and that's where, of course, Andre, we came to EarthCheck, and we came with this algorithm, and we got a university in Australia to go and sort of review that, make sure that what we are saying in terms of savings or data accuracy is true. And when we go and speak to customers, that helps us a lot, right? Because we are going in there and we're saying we are EarthCheck certified. We've been sort of independently reviewed by this organization who is in the sustainability space. A lot of hotels are working with this brand, and so that's sort of how you have to approach this. And for me, that's just a start. Like obviously, there's a lot more that we can do better in this space.
Yeah.
Like the vision for us is making a true smart building a reality, which is one where, you know, the building is in itself a living organism that's collecting that information and acting on it, versus, you know, needing sort of multiple manual steps of humans actually analyzing that data to figure out what to do. We just want to make sure that we give you the right decisions to make. And when we can't sort of make a decision, we get that input from you to make that. And so that's kind of where we want to go.
Yeah, that's fascinating, mate. That's really, really interesting. I mean, you know, capacity and behavior is still a big part of it as well. So, you know, we always talk about leading a horse to water. You know, we provide the same thing. We provide some really quite user-friendly, but quite comprehensive software, you know, that you're able to capture that information easily, present the data back, make actionable information and decisions. But still, it comes down to people. You know, if I'm looking at my chemical handling, you know, a big part of what we benchmark and also talk about is responsible handling of chemicals. And so, you know, it's a critical part of anything, not just when you're looking at a housekeeping one. You know, just Google pool chemical explosion in Thailand, and you can see that is a nightmare potentially waiting to happen. So I think the importance around that is addressing risk, you know, ensuring that whoever it is that you're working with is providing you with updated MSDSs, you know, is providing the right type of training. Now, it's one of those things that we've noticed. It's sometimes not always the big guys who can do this. Sometimes it's about formulating really strong relationships, you know, with local providers or with, you know, more custom providers who can actually start to really support you and your teams in terms of that behavior change. But the research that we see, and that was part of through a not-for-profit research institute, now we see the human touch, just people's awareness and engagement can save anywhere between 3 to 7% in terms of improvement. And that's before you've looked at any type of technology. That's just a spotlight and making sure people are aware of what they're doing, that they're KPI'd, that they're trained, and that there's enthusiasm behind that. So I think you combine that with the technology, and then suddenly we have a very interesting opportunity in terms of those efficiency gains. Oh, and I think everyone's on mute.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, how are we for time?
Yes, so I was just about to come in because it was super engaging and I didn't want to interrupt anyone halfway through their conversation. But unfortunately, we've run out of time. We've come up to a 1 hour mark already. And unless we have any other questions coming in, I think we've pretty much answered everyone's questions. So do you guys have any last things that you want to share before we end this entire webinar?
I think, Peyton, if there are additional questions and technical questions that we can't answer today, please reach out to Peyton or Sai or the team from SensorFlow, and I'm sure Jürgen and I would be more than happy to answer any questions that the attendees may want. And then, happy to try and clarify, because I know that there were some questions still coming around, baselines and EU kind of markers and those kind of things. So happy to respond at a later date if need be.